Welcome to another season of the Compose Like a Girl podcast. I'm your host, founder, and composer Jocelyn Hagan. My Compose Like a Girl initiative amplifies female-identifying composers, helps conductors diversify their concerts, and works toward more equality in music programming and commissioning. I've been sitting down for conversations with some amazing composers, and I want to invite you into these deeper explorations of art and life. I hope you leave with some inspiration, just as I did. On today's Season 2 premiere, I'm sharing a recent conversation I had with Esabel Valverde. I've known Mari for many years, and I believe she has always been an inspiring person. We're both graduates of St. Olaf College, and I adore her deep connection to text and language. I also feel that Mari's identity as a trans woman adds such an important perspective to all of these conversations we've been having on this podcast, and also the ways that her gender identity intersects with her creative process and art. Gender is only one piece of who we are, and I love how every artist I sit down with has their own distinct relationship and experience with it. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode, and enjoy. Hello, Mari. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm excited to talk to you. I feel like this has been a long time coming.
Yeah, we've both been really busy. So
yeah, well, and we both studied both at St. Olaf and then also at the European American Musical Alliance program that takes place in Paris. And I loved that. What was your favorite part of that program?
so I went twice, actually. I think my first time was more transformational. But my second time, I kind of braved the wilderness and went out into the French-speaking part of the world. And I remember having lunch at a Thai restaurant and hearing a Thai French person speak French and speaking to them in French was such a highlight.
Isn't that interesting? As composers, we like sound, right? Just in general.
Absolutely.
So like the sound of language is very intriguing to me, and the way that people speak is fascinating. Your biography states that you are proficient in Spanish, French, and Brazilian Portuguese. How did you become proficient in so many languages?
So I'm Mexican American, and my father's father is my most recent connection in my genealogy, I guess, to Mexico according to current geography. But I grew up learning or listening to Spanish, and my parents emphasized that I learned Spanish whenever it became a class in school, which was 7th grade for me. And I wanted to take French, but that didn't happen until St. Olaf. Actually, part of my process of falling in love with music had a lot to do with the French language, because I bought a book of French art songs, and I would listen to like the piano part recordings over and over, and eventually I would study some of that music. And when I was teaching myself how to play piano, I didn't have, Mozart or Beethoven. It was Debussy for me as a starting point. And then when I was in college, I started listening to a lot of Brazilian folk and pop music. And I guess that was the beginning of my study of Brazilian Portuguese. Really, I just loved the music, and I wanted to be able to sing along. And then I just kept on scratching that itch until I became conversational.
Oh, that's just amazing. I'm just a typical American, and I only speak English. I can sort of translate German when forced, but it's not a muscle that I ever used very often. Even when I was studying German, I just never got proficient. So that completely impresses me. And I also, think a lot about how much we love sound, and how the beauty of language is something I think about a lot when I'm setting words to music, and I'm sure you do too. How does this knowledge of languages influence your composition?
Language is a huge, huge thing for me. I have great reverence for every language, European, Asian, whatever. I have very little fear when it comes to other languages, but I also, like I said, I also have reverence, and I think that kind of goes hand in hand. If I'm learning a piece of music, for example, in Farsi, then I'm going to make some phone calls and make sure I learn how to sing the music correctly, or the best of my ability. I use that example because here in Texas, one of Abby Batinas' pieces was on the audition list, and it was in Farsi. And, of course, some people don't care as much as I do. I'll just say that outright. So I called a friend who was from Iran, and I got him to record it, and I listened to the text over and over and over. And, Abby includes an IPA guide. And I created my own IPA guide, and then I swapped notes. And, I'm really trying to figure out the soul of the text. And I take a similar approach when I'm composing. I wouldn't ever set a language that I should say, I wouldn't ever set a text that I don't know how to pronounce. That takes a while to get enough proficiency to have comfort with that. And I'm happy to do that research. And I think with the internet, it's pretty crazy how quickly we can get certain resources. And I really exercise that ability a lot.
So, moving from words now into poetry, what do you look for when you're picking a text to set to music?
Oh, I think the single most important thing is that there is movement in the text. I would say that I'm still a student of music, and notwithstanding my Latin American background, I don't feel that I'm particularly rhythmically inclined. And I think that's part of it, is that I think that a text and a language has a certain pulse and rhythm to it already. So when you're setting a text and you're reciting it, you're internalizing the text, whatever the language is, you kind of can get a sense for the pulse or the rhythm of it. And so text helps in making decisions about the rhythm of what you're composing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you told me once that you commission many of the poems that you set. Can you tell me more about that?
I wouldn't say many. It's just been like three, and it's because I work with a poet named Amir Rabia, a multiracial, trans disabled queer poet and librarian. I've worked with Amir since 2015. My first project working with Amir was Our Phoenix. The poem was called Our Dangerous Sweetness. And I think Amir's poetry, I mention all of the identity because, of course, that's who they are, but I think it informs their art, and it resonates with me deeply because, notwithstanding being very trans, being very queer, being non white, their poetry, to me, it speaks deeply to the human experience. And I think there is a universal tone to the poems that they write. So I have set their poetry to music multiple times. Before Spring is one of them.
Can you tell me more about Before Spring?
I think probably the most overarching thing I can say about my purpose or goal as a composer is that my music is about unlearning shame. And I say that as a woman, I say it as someone who's transgender. I say that as somebody who's racially ambiguous. I say that as a millennial. I say that as someone who doesn't come from enormous wealth. And I say that as somebody who is in classical music and works with people in classical music. So that's all to say that my life has been a process of unlearning shame. And the way that I would describe it is that I'm not supposed to exist. I'm not supposed to be possible. And that society, in obvious ways and not so obvious ways, puts shame onto my body, my human body. And so when I'm writing music, especially when I have a text like the one that Amir wrote for Before Spring, because it is sexual, but it is a process of removing shame from my body that I didn't put there, that other people or society has put there through my life. I once described in a talk that being transgender, people think it's about putting on clothes and putting on like a character or a persona or trying to embody something. But I would describe it best as taking things off, being naked. Being trans feels like being naked, not being something else.
Wow. Hmm.
So before spring, the prompt was from, 2 or 3 years ago, because you know how commissioning goes. The original talk was we want to commission 3 composers, and we would like one composer to write about creation, life, and afterlife.
Hmm.
And they gave me a choice. So I decided, I think afterlife would be, I don't really feel like I'm the right composer for that. And life seems too broad. So I was excited and I said, I'll do the creation piece. And of course, I turned around and I asked Amir, would you write an original text for this project? And, they're trans, I'm trans. I'm not certain, but I'm like 99% sure that neither Amir or I can procreate. I don't know how much you know about medical transition, but that's part of it usually.
Yeah.
Creation from a trans lens is it's from a trans lens, but I wanted to be able to apply to everybody. And like I said, I'm all about unlearning shame. The poem that they gave to me is an untitled poem. There was no title, but the Microsoft Word file said erotic poems, and they wrote 2 for me to choose from. So, it's something erotic, it's something sexual, and I really wanted to do that because I'm trying to, in blunt terms, I'm trying to not feel bad about myself. And I don't mean to apologize for myself. I mean to like be able to experience pleasure, I think is like the highest and most radical thing for me. And maybe that's toxic. I don't know. or
Aw.
pro-capitalist, problematic in some sense. But I think true pleasure has to have safety. And safety is something that I'm always chasing. So with For Spring, it's about creation. It's about what happens before birth and in a sense before spring.
I'm loving hearing you talk about all of these things, especially this idea of unlearning shame, because there's everything that you're going through and have gone through in your life with being transgender. And then I also feel like in the music world itself, there's a layer of shame. So you like have a double whammy of both of those things. And yeah, do you ever think about it on the music side too?
I don't know how much I think about it, but I think it definitely comes out. And I think it comes out as anger. The few times that I have had Reiki, my therapist, I would always say, she would always cry in the middle of the session. And I'd be like, I'm sorry I made you cry. And she says, you have so much anger. And I'm just like not even aware of it until somebody gives me a microphone. Because I am unforgiving about things. I feel a lot of things.
Yeah, well, and your demeanor is more cheerful, open and honest, but also just kind. At least that's my experiences when we have conversations. Is I don't think I've seen that anger side of you, and maybe even if I did, I wouldn't quite know it? Does that make sense?
I think it goes into my music,
Oh.
and I'm aware of it in a roundabout way because whenever I have the opportunity of being invited to a rehearsal or sent a recording of a rehearsal, I often remark that my music is too beautiful. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that. I have a very Frenchy background, but I always tell them that my music is meant to be aggressive.
Huh. Yeah, so digging into different kind of emotion than is maybe reflected most of the time? Or do you want your musicians to see past the pretty and get to an underbelly of darkness or anger in there?
It's both. I want them to understand that truth is beauty and that when you don't apologize for something, that there's something beautiful about how aggressive it is. It sounds very masculine when I'm talking about it. I think especially trans people are made to think about gender all the time. And I think being a feminine person, and I think this would apply to really anybody who is a woman, gives you a license to be more masculine in your actions because people can't steal away your femininity. And for men, trans or cis or non-binary, it's the opposite. They have the license to be more feminine and not have their masculinity stolen away from them. Now, there are many men in our society that don't realize that. But those who have a positive understanding of their masculinity assert themselves in that way. And I think in my music, I'm very aggressive. I feel like my music is sort of masculine. And I always, think to myself that I'll leave it to the men who compose music to write the more gushy mushy flowery stuff.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of something that Abby Bettinas once told me, and that was that, one of her comp teachers, I don't know if she ever told me which one, but they said, you got to be careful about writing this beautiful, romantic kind of music because it'll be seen as too feminine and nobody will take you seriously.
I understand that fear, but I don't think that is really a concern. I think people appreciate music and different kinds of music at different types of walks in life. So I don't. To me, it feels scary to operate creatively from a stance of fear.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand that statement, but I don't think I necessarily agree.
I listened to a lot of your music in the past couple weeks, and I definitely hear the French music coming through. Oh, it is so evident. And also I love it. I love French music. So that it just makes sense to hear you actually just acknowledge that out loud and say, yes, this is my direct influence. And yeah, are there any others besides French music that would say, yes, this is a direct influence on my sound or my art?
I think the French composers early on, like when I was like 16, one of the all-state audition pieces in Texas was "The Death of David" from King David by Onager, who is, I don't think he's French, I think he's Swiss, but he was from Les Six, the group of
Oh yeah.
composers.
Hmm.
So he's Frenchy, even though he's Swiss. And, I really got into a lot of that music at a younger age. Um, and then when I went to St. Olaf, I got sucked in by some Nordic composers, specifically like Steinhammer, Sibelius, um, Peterson Barrier, and Grieg.
Hmm.
And my roommate, who went on to move to Denmark and still lives there, he studied Norwegian at the school and then he studied Danish. And, so we were collaborating. I actually wrote two Danish songs for him. Now those Danish songs are on an album that is being considered, not nominated, but considered for the Grammy process.
Woohoo! That's
Um,
exciting.
so it's weird. It's really weird writing music whenever I was a student and those pieces are finally like getting air,
Yep.
oxygen, opportunity. Because I remember back then feeling like I wasn't worthy of anything for a lot of reasons. And I still struggle with that to an extent, although I obviously not in the same way. I feel like I've worked through that karma a bit. So there was Nordic influence, there was Brazilian influence, I'm sure somewhere in there. And one of the pieces that I was commissioned to write was for Adams State University, which is in the San Luis Valley, which is in southern Colorado and northern New Mexico. Hispanic serving institution, small music program. And I was asked to specifically set a poem called Maps by Yesenia Montilla, who is an Afro-Latina poet based in New York. And it had to do with like immigration, separation, isolation. I'm telling you all of this because I had to write for guitar for the first time. And, people ask me, like, how do you go about that? And it's really the same thing every time. You find a piece of music that you love that includes that instrument. And if you can get a hold of the music score and just like internalize that, try to understand what it can do, what you like about it. And having said all of that, because I had to write for guitar, I went on a search to listen to the Siete Canciones Populares Españolas by Manuel de Falla. It is done a lot. And Spanish is completely undervalued in the classical world. But in this case, a Spanish poet, a Spanish composer, wrote these pieces. You can find them for voice and piano, but the piano parts are very guitar inspired. I found a recording of a duo doing these songs, but it was cello and guitar. And I listened to it a lot. I followed the score. I could listen to that song cycle all day. It is brilliant.
I want to ask you about your piece, Moonlight Quartet for String Quartet. Why is that funny?
I'll just go ahead. I want you to finish.
Well, it's in my goal for this podcast that we listen to both vocal and instrumental works by all the composers that are featured. And part of that is just because so oftentimes the instrumental works are the only ones that the side of the classical world usually deems worthy, right? Yeah. So my idea is to really, always have one of both, so that, especially since, you're like me, you write a lot of vocal music, and it's frustrating when that always isn't seen as being equal to writing instrumental music. So I'm trying to balance that out with this podcast and feature pieces that are both instrumental and vocal. So that was the main reason for choosing the Moonlight Quartet, is because it's an instrumental piece. But do you have another instrumental piece you'd rather have me talk about?
No, I think this is a great piece.
Okay. Well, tell me about it.
So it is a choral piece.
Oh.
I transcribed it. I transcribed it for a string quartet. And I did it because a friend of mine in San Francisco, his sister, I believe, was getting married, and he played in my graduate recital. And he says, I really love this piece. Would you mind if I arranged a string quartet? And I said, I'm glad you like it. I would love to go ahead and transcribe it for string quartet. There's a beautiful poem that goes with it. It's actually in Swedish, and the song is sung in Swedish. And so it has that like June time, midsummer like theme. And the moon doesn't stay down very long in the summer. It's mostly sun. But you have this image of the moon, and I don't know. I think Scandinavians think about the sun and the moon a lot more than most people.
Let's listen now to Mari's Moonlight Quartet, performed by the Her Ensemble. I want to actually go back to something you touched on in that conversation that we just had. And it was about you not feeling worthy with your music and how something that you wrote when you were younger is now getting some amazing attention and will be on an album and considered for getting a possible Grammy
Nomination.
nomination. Yeah, that has to feel amazing in one way, right? Because, oh my gosh, this piece is doing something. But then also in the same breath or moment, feel a little bit frustrating, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I think that the frustration it goes away. Thankfully. I think at the end of everything, at the end of karma is just gratitude. I really believe that. And sometimes I reach for gratitude sooner than I'm ready for it. But yeah, with those pieces, I will say this. I knew when I was writing those pieces that they were gems. And that was a word that a reviewer of the album used to describe my pieces. And I knew that. I believed in myself in the process of writing the piece. But, that was back at St. Olaf. I really envy those days because that environment was so conducive to creativity.
Hmm. Yeah, it really was.
It's not a given to have community with people like that and to just be able to create. You have to really work for that on the other side of a degree. But I took the reins on it and I took advantage of it. I am so proud of what I was able to do at St. Olaf. And it was possible only because of St. Olaf. I came out as trans at St. Olaf. It was probably the first time in my life where I felt safe to be myself. And I remember struggling through writing those early pieces, but those are some of the most popular pieces. Dearest O Soul is another one of them. I wrote Dearest O Soul how many years ago? It was 2009. And I had just come back from Paris for the first time. So, I had counterpoint on my mind.
Oh, yes, most definitely.
Yeah, that's mainly what you get there. And as far as I'm concerned, at least for me, that's what it was like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to learn counterpoint,
Oh, yeah.
uh, or practice it. It's not a one and done.
Oh, no, it's all counterpoint all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all that. You're making me very proud to be an Oli today, because I do feel like that was a very safe space and a wonderful place to learn and to figure out who you are. I think it's also where I figured out a lot of things about myself too. I'm grateful that we have that kind of shared history, even though we weren't there at the same time.
Absolutely. It's a important place.
All right. I want to talk to you a little bit about Texas. So you grew up in Texas, you live in Texas, and you used this term in your email to me, the Texas music education machine.
It is. It's a
Yeah.
machine.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Oof. Okay, here's where the anger comes in. It's a lot of things. I have to be grateful for my music education, specifically choir. I sang in honor choir whenever I was in sixth grade, and I have been in choir ever since, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, St. Olaf. And then when I moved to San Francisco, I looked for a choir. I sang with a choir called the International Orange Chorale of San Francisco. And for those that don't know, International Orange is the name of the color of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Mm.
And then I came back to Texas and, searched for choral opportunities here. I mean, choir is my life, for better or worse. I think Texas does certain things very well. And as a professional, it's really frustrating. First of all, it's like anywhere in the US. The suburbs where there are more white families that have inherited wealth and invest in those specific school districts, these choir programs, they're like football teams.
Yeah.
you know?
Hmm.
I always explain it this way. Football is king in Texas. I don't care at all about football. But if you have football, then you have to have a marching band. And if your budget is big enough for a marching band, you get the barnacle of choir. And if your choir is big enough, you have the barnacle of orchestra. And I think because of that, band and choir is huge in Texas. And a lot of people are band kids and choir kids growing up, at least. But on the professional side, there's very little appetite for new music. And I became super aware of that when I moved to San Francisco because it is the polar opposite. Everybody has to have a premiere or multiple premieres on every single concert. It's part of the marketing of come to our concert. This is going to be a premiere. That's what they value more than, I don't mean this in a mean way, but that's what they value that more, even if the music isn't like stellar or just like groundbreaking. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it would be an extreme way to say that they'll celebrate mediocrity. It's just like true justice is not finding diverse people and celebrating them too. It's celebrating their mediocrity and also making sure that they are nourished along the way, just like anybody else would be. I shouldn't say diverse, I should say marginalized people, because there are poor white people all over the country too.
Well, I have never heard it described that way, of celebrating mediocrity, because we celebrate so much mediocrity in the music world, just with a lot of white male composers that were writing things, and it was automatically what was getting programmed or getting published. Not a lot of it was great. And that always kind of drove me crazy. It's like, why is this white man getting so much more attention when it's like there's all this wealth of other things that I think are of higher quality, better music, more engaging music that actually is saying something, has something to contribute to a conversation. That kind of music wasn't nearly as popular. And that was something that I kind of realized mostly in my 30s, I think, is like, why is this happening? And it's
Mm.
part of the reason why, with our publishing company, why we've been so focused on diversity, but also bringing great music and maybe even some mediocre music who's but like that there's just a more wealth of things to choose from.
People ask me like, how did you learn this? How did you get into this? And I actually burst out. And this is, again, probably from the anger that I just have. It's just
Mm.
with me. But it's just like I've spent so many years of the past, I would say 15 years, trying to impress people, trying to show that I'm worthy. That worthiness is something that I struggled with. And I want to take it back to your comment about mediocrity. So, white men are not a monolith. And this is why I said there are poor white people all over the country. We need to come to a point where people realize that, like, it shouldn't matter what your walk in life is. You should be celebrated for your mediocrity so that you have a path to excellence. And it's really hard to build that path by yourself. And I say that to the extent that I feel like I've had to do that.
Can I just say how amazing that statement is and how much I agree with it, and why it is really at the core of why I've taken on this initiative of Compose Like a Girl, which is not only this podcast but the choral series and all this mentorship that I've been providing for women of all ages and all levels, just to get more feedback on their work, get more performances so that they can continue to level up.
Yes, the competitions, the competition for commissions, everything is like you need to be your most excellent self. And that's not very helpful to very many people. It's helpful for people with the most resources. And you can say, okay, well, we want a Black composer or a woman who's a composer, and you have still you're going to end up, the winner or the person you hire is going to end up being a Black woman with a lot of resources. So it's just like the diversity aspect to me is integral to everything now. However, what I'm trying to get to when I talk to people is that folks need to learn how to value, I should say, not folks. I think white men with the most resources need to understand how they can benefit or learn from opening up those resources to more people. I will say this. Look, you asked me to be on your podcast. The people who have commissioned me, I've had multiple lesbians commission me. To the extent that I've had male people commission me, they've usually been men of color that have gone out of their way to platform me. So I think those people they more readily see me. If you're a woman or a person of color, I'm more readily visible than I am to a cis het white person, because I'm not worthy of investment, because they don't see how helping me helps them. So if we change the structures to help people with less resources even than me, then not only does it even the field, it creates a situation where cishet white men have to compete, and it demands excellence from them the same way the system has demanded excellence from anybody who's not cishet and white and male.
There are so many of Mari's choral pieces that we could have featured on this episode, but I really wanted to share the two movements of Earth Mother. Even though we didn't get a chance to talk about it in our conversation, I really like this piece because it's so powerful and soulful. Great melodies and wonderful new poetry by fellow Compose Like a Girl composer Sherry Blevins. Also, it's just a fabulous performance. This recording is from the University of Michigan Men's Glee Club under the direction of Mark Stover. Thank you, Mari, for this wonderful conversation today. It was wonderful to hear you talk about these things and so openly and honestly. So thank you for all that.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure.
I appreciate Mari's willingness to explore the depth of her emotions, especially anger. Anger is one of those emotions that women aren't really supposed to feel or show, which is ridiculous because, of course, women get angry. But that's not what I'm feeling today. Today, I'm grateful to share this platform with composers I admire, like Mari. Compose Like a Girl was produced by Justin Schell, Laura Kreider, and me, Jocelyn Hagan, with special help from fellow composers Erica Malpass and Addie Struckman. The Compose Like a Girl theme music was composed by cellist Cicely Parnas. Thank you all for helping me with this vision. Thanks also to the University of Michigan Men's Glee Club and her ensemble for their permission to use their recordings on today's episode. You can learn more about Mari Esabel Valverde and her music at marivalverde.com and by following her on social media. Check out the links in our show notes, visit jocelynhagan.com/compose like a girl, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram to listen to the music we talked about today, learn more about the Compose Like a Girl initiative, and check out past episodes. You can also find choral programming ideas by checking out the Compose Like a Girl choral series through Graphite Publishing. You can subscribe to the Compose Like a Girl podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and if you're so moved, rate us on Apple Podcasts and share it with a few friends who you think will find inspiration. This really helps us create a sustainable podcast. Until next time, trust your instincts. Be brave and unapologetic for your talents. Thanks for listening.